You wake up every morning thinking people owe you kindness just because you breathe. You drag your feet through life waiting for something to change, but the only thing changing is your own patience running out. Let me tell you something real. Nobody owes you love. Nobody owes you loyalty. Not your friends, not your family, not that person you keep texting who gives you one-word replies. You think because you were genuine, they should stay? Because you showed up, they should appreciate it? No, that's not how the world works, kid. The world eats soft people, and you're tender meat on the table. You want to survive, you want to thrive, then grow teeth, tear through the silence they buried you under. Build from that pain. Learn to smile when it burns, because they don't want to see you recover. They want you stuck, sad, quiet, just like they left you. You think your heartbreak is special? You think being used, lied to, manipulated was a tragedy tailored just for you? That's the initiation fee. That's the cost of stepping into this mess called life. And here's the catch. It never ends. There'll be more betrayal, more fake friends, more people who clap when you lose. But the point isn't to avoid the fire. It's to walk through it and come out with skin like steel. They laughed at your dreams because they were too small to imagine something bigger. They mocked your silence because they knew it held power. They called you weak when you chose peace over drama, and crazy when you finally snapped. That's the game. And if you think you're gonna win it by playing nice, you've already lost. Let's get something straight. You are not broken. You are not the things they said behind your back. You are not the failure they tried to make you feel like. You are not the silence they forced on you. You're just tired. Tired of explaining yourself to people who were never listening. Tired of giving to people who only take. Tired of hoping they'll change, they'll understand, they'll stay. They won't. And the more you beg for that closure, that apology, that recognition, the more power you hand them. So stop waiting. Let the silence answer for you. Let your success make the noise. Let your discipline become your revenge. They called you sensitive like it was a weakness. But what they don't know is the ones who feel deeply are the ones who rise hardest. Pain sharpens the blade. Rejection builds rage. And when you learn to use that fire right, when you stop wasting it on people who never deserved you, you become a threat, a silent one. And silent threats are the ones that hit the hardest. You want to be respected? Then stop chasing people. Stop explaining yourself. Stop seeking permission to be great. Just become it. Quietly, coldly, unapologetically. You don't owe them a reaction. Not your ex who moved on too fast. Not your friend who stopped calling. Not your family that never believed in you. Let them wonder. Let them scroll through your profile pretending they don't care. Let them hear your name in rooms they thought you'd never enter. That's the real revenge. not proving them wrong with words, but with actions so loud their denial drowns in your success. You gave them pieces of your soul like it was candy, didn't you? Thought if you loved hard enough, stayed long enough, sacrificed deep enough, maybe they'd stay. Maybe they'd see your worth. But they didn't, and they won't. Because some people weren't made to appreciate gold. They're used to dust. They chase thrills, not depth. They want noise, not presence. And you were too much for their small world, too heavy for their hollow hearts. So they left. Or worse, they stayed just enough to drain you, then disappeared when your light dimmed. That's the pattern. And you keep falling for it because you still believe there's good in everyone. Let me break that illusion. Some people are poison dressed as warm. Some people don't want love. They want control. And if you keep giving them access to your heart, they'll ruin it, like they always do. Then blame you for bleeding. You think being a good person protects you? That being loyal gets you loyalty back? Wake up. This world doesn't operate on fairness. It moves on power, on silence, on detachment. You want to stop getting hurt? And stop announcing your intentions to people who only listen to use you. Stop trying to fix people who like being broken. Stop throwing your light at those who live off shadows. There's strength in walking away. There's peace in being misunderstood. You don't need to explain why you're distant. You don't need to explain why you disappeared. People will call it cold. Let them. Because warmth is a luxury you only give to those who've earned it. Let them talk. Let them twist your name in rooms you've never stepped into. Let them throw shade while you build empires in the dark. You were never meant to be liked. You were built to be undeniable. And the only way to do that is to stop living for validation. Stop crying for people who sleep fine after hurting you. Stop expecting closure from chaos. You are not here to beg, not for attention, not for love, not for recognition. You're here to become a storm so loud, even the ones who doubted you can't ignore the thunder. That's how you win. Not by screaming, but by becoming so powerful, your silence breaks their comfort. You've cried enough, wasted too many nights staring at ceilings, wondering what's wrong with you. Newsflash, there's nothing wrong with you. You just gave the right energy to the wrong people, and that's okay. Lesson learned, but don't go soft now. Don't go numb either. Stay sharp, stay dangerous. Let every betrayal teach you precision. Let every ghost remind you how cold the world can be. And when you walk, walk like they never mattered. Not out of pride, but because they didn't earn the right to keep renting space in your head. Your peace is expensive. Stop giving it to people who pay in excuses. They're watching. Oh, they're always watching. That friend who stopped checking in. That lover who said you were too much. That relative who said you'd never make it. They're all watching. Hoping you stay stuck, hoping you keep chasing, explaining, breaking. Don't. Give them silence. Give them distance. Give them nothing but your absence. And then build. Build when no one claps. Work when no one believes. Rise when no one is looking. And when you arrive, don't announce it. Let them feel it in the pit of their stomachs. Let them realize they lost someone who would have given them the world. Let regret be their soundtrack while you move in power. You know what your real problem is? You keep giving people too many chances. You let disrespect slide because you're afraid of being alone. You tolerate silence because you think it's better than rejection. You lower your standards just to keep someone around, someone who doesn't even know the value of what you bring. That's why you're always tired. That's why you're always confused. Because you keep trying to make peace with people who make war in your head. You keep watering dead plants, trying to grow something in soil that's already poisoned. And the worst part, you call it love. You convince yourself they care because they said, "I miss you" once at midnight. Because they came back for a moment just to disappear again. That's not love. That's manipulation wearing a smile. And the longer you entertain it, the deeper you sink. Stop saying you're okay when you're not. Stop pretending their coldness doesn't affect you. It does. It breaks you every time they ignore your messages. Every time they cancel last minute. Every time they remember you only when they need something. But here's the truth they'll never say. They know you'll always be there. They've calculated your forgiveness. They've memorized your weaknesses. And they will use it until you're empty. You don't need to change who you are, you just need to change who you give access to. Loyalty isn't about staying, it's about who stays when it's inconvenient. And if they only show up when they need something, they don't love you. They love the benefit. Know the difference. You want peace? Then make silence your best friend. Make solitude your weapon. People fear what they don't understand, and silence terrifies them because it forces them to face their own noise. Be the calm storm. Be the presence that speaks without saying a word. That's real power. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to explain your worth to those who couldn't see it when you were begging them to. Let them wonder where you went. Let them taste the void they created. And when they come knocking, don't answer. Not out of spite, but because you've outgrown rooms that made you feel small. You keep trying to prove you're enough to people who aren't even enough for themselves. You keep shrinking your voice so they don't feel insecure. Stop. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to stand out in ways that make people uncomfortable. Your strength offends the weak. Your light exposes the fake. Your silence highlights their chaos. That's why they push you away. That's why they ghost you. Not because you're not worthy, but because your existence reminds them of everything they're not. And instead of rising, they'd rather drag you down. Don't let them. Be unshakable. Be untouchable. Be so focused that their distractions become background noise. And when they say you changed, smile. Because that's the goal. To evolve so far beyond who they thought you were that they can't recognize you anymore. Growth is supposed to make people uncomfortable. Healing is supposed to leave people behind. And success is supposed to be silent. Let your discipline make the statement. Let your habits scream louder than your words. You don't need to post your moves. You don't need to broadcast your pain. Just move quietly, ruthlessly. And when you arrive, let your presence be the reminder of what they lost when they played you. You keep hoping they'll realize your worth someday, don't you? That maybe one day they'll wake up and finally feel what you felt. But here's the truth no one wants to say. Most people don't regret losing you because they never really valued you to begin with. They didn't overlook you by accident. They ignored your worth on purpose because deep down, they knew you were too much for their shallow hearts. You gave them consistency while they gave you confusion. You gave them loyalty while they gave you doubt. You stayed through storms they caused, and they walked away the second it rained on you. That's not love. That's convenience. And you were never meant to be someone's convenience. They'll remember you. Oh, they always do. Not when you're crying, not when you're begging, but when you finally stop showing up, when your silence becomes louder than your words ever were. That's when they panic. That's when they start stalking your profile, reminiscing, regretting. But don't fall for it. Don't go back, because the moment you let them in again, they'll destroy the new version of you just to feed the same cycle. Let them feel your absence. Let them taste the space you used to fill. And if they ever come back, tell them this. You don't get to play with fire and be surprised when it doesn't warm you the second time. They took your kindness as weakness. They saw your silence as permission. They mistook your patience for passivity, and you allowed it. You tolerated the disrespect because you were scared of being alone. But solitude is not your enemy. It's your reset. It's the place you go to remember your worth. The quiet is not empty, it's full of answers. And if you listen closely, it'll remind you of all the moments you ignored your gut just to keep someone else happy. It'll replay the nights you couldn't sleep while they slept peacefully, unbothered. It'll remind you of the tears you wiped alone, the apologies you never got, the love you gave that never came back. Use that, not to stay bitter, but to get better. You want to win? Then disappear. Not physically, mentally, emotionally. Cut them off without a goodbye. Stop replying. Stop explaining. Stop giving them the satisfaction of knowing how much it hurt. The real revenge isn't in showing them how broken you are. It's in showing them how nothing they did could break you. Build in silence, heal in silence, grind in silence. And when you come back, don't say a word. Let your glow speak. Let your presence make them uncomfortable. Let your success haunt their regret. And don't ever apologize for evolving. People who loved the old, broken version of you will always feel betrayed by your growth. Let them. Because the moment you chose yourself, you became dangerous. Not because you were out for revenge, but because you no longer need their validation to breathe. You stop chasing, and that's what scares them. You stop needing their energy to feel alive. That's real power. Independence. Not financial, not physical, but emotional. When they can no longer affect your mood, when their silence doesn't shake you, when their presence doesn't excite you anymore, that's when you've won. You know what happens when you finally stop caring? When you truly, deeply stop giving a damn about who stayed, who left, who lied, and who never said goodbye. You get your power back. Not just some cheap confidence boost. Real, terrifying, unshakable power. The kind of power that makes people uncomfortable. Because now you walk like you've got nothing to prove. Now your silence hits harder than your words ever did. Now your presence feels different. Not because you changed who you are, but because you finally decided who no longer deserved access to it. And the people who once made you feel like too much, now they realize you were never the problem. They just weren't enough. See, when you were down, they watched. Not one hand reached out. Not one voice called to check on you. But they sure clapped the loudest when it looked like you were losing. Because people love a broken version of you. It makes them feel bigger. It makes them feel safe. But when you rise, when you start piecing yourself back together, quietly, painfully, relentlessly, they panic. Because they know the storm you're building in silence is coming for everything they thought you'd never reach. So let them sit with that fear. Let them choke on the silence they gave you. You don't need to warn anyone anymore. You don't need to prove anything. Just win. Quietly, brutally, unforgivingly. You spent nights overthinking, wondering if you were too emotional, too intense, too loyal. But let me tell you something. Your depth isn't a weakness. It's a curse to the shallow. People don't know what to do with a soul like yours. One that shows up without being asked. One that stays when things get ugly. One that forgives even when it's breaking. So they reject it. They test it. They take advantage of it. But you keep pouring. Because you think if you just love them right, they'll change. They won't. And it's not your job to make them see your value. It's your job to protect your value from those who refuse to see it. So stop showing up for people who never ask how you're doing. Stop chasing people who act like you're hard to love. You're not hard to love. They're just incapable of loving anything real. Real scares them. Real demands effort. Real forces them to face the parts of themselves they've been hiding behind filters and silence. You don't need that kind of love. You need peace. You need discipline. You need a mission so big that their absence doesn't even register anymore. And trust me, the second you choose purpose over people, everything changes. You stop waiting. You stop hoping. You start building. Because at the end of the day, no one's coming to save you. Not the one you stayed up for. Not the ones who said forever. Not the friends who promised they'd never leave. It's just you. You versus everything that tried to break you. And you know what? That's enough. You've survived more than they'll ever know. And every scar, every silent night, every time you wanted to quit but didn't, that's proof. Proof that you're not done. Proof that you've still got more to give. Not to them, but to yourself. So wake up, stand up, wipe the dust off, and keep going. Because the moment you stop needing them is the moment they start needing you. You ever notice how they only remember you when it's convenient? When they're bored, lonely, or just need someone to make them feel important again, they come back with small talk, fake smiles, and cheap apologies, trying to squeeze their way back into the spot they abandoned. And the saddest part? You used to let them. You used to confuse their return with redemption. But returning doesn't mean they're sorry. It means they noticed your light shining again and thought they could feed off it one more time. But not this time. Not anymore. You're not a rehab center for emotionally unavailable people. You're not a second chance for those who threw away the first without a blink. You're not a warm place for people who bring cold hearts. Let them freeze in the silence they created. It took you years to learn that self-respect means choosing yourself, even when it hurts, even when you love them, even when you miss them. Because if loving them means losing yourself, that's not love. That's self-abandonment. And you've done enough of that. You've dimmed yourself too many times to let others shine. You've held your breath just to keep peace in rooms that were already on fire. You've bitten your tongue until it bled, just so they wouldn't feel uncomfortable with your truth. But that ends now, because real power isn't found in being liked. It's found in not needing to be. It's in walking away without making a scene. It's in being so grounded in who you are that their silence, their rejection, their betrayal, it doesn't move you anymore. It just confirms everything your gut already knew. You're not too much. You're not overthinking. You're not difficult. You're just finally awake, finally seeing the patterns, finally realizing that love doesn't mean sacrificing yourself to keep someone else comfortable. You used to blame yourself for everything. Maybe if you were quieter, they'd stay. Maybe if you were stronger, they'd respect you. Maybe if you were less emotional, less intense, less honest, they'd finally love you right. But let me tell you what they were never ready for. The version of you that stopped begging. The version of you that stopped explaining. The version of you that started healing without them. You gave them everything, and they still wanted more. You gave them truth, and they chose lies. You gave them your presence, and they treated it like an option. But one day, they'll scroll past your success in silence. They'll watch your rise from the sidelines and remember the days you used to call, to care, to check in. They'll remember when your heart was theirs and how they mistook it for weakness. That's when regret hits. Not when they lose you, but when they realize you never needed them to win. Let them sit in that silence. Let it echo. Because nothing haunts a person more than realizing they broke something that was sent to heal them. So from now on, speak less, move sharper. Protect your peace like it's your last possession. Don't let anyone guilt you into shrinking again. Don't let them gaslight you into thinking your standards are too high. You're not hard to love. They're just too lazy to love deeply. You're not cold. You're just done melting for people who always leave you in pieces. And if they think your silence is bitterness, let them. If they call your growth distance, so be it. You're not here to be understood by people who benefit from your confusion. You're here to evolve so unapologetically that they start to question every version of you they ever knew. There's something terrifying that happens when you finally stop being the version of yourself they were comfortable with. The version that said yes when you meant no. The version that laughed it off when it hurt. The version that picked up every call, answered every message, and stayed, even when your spirit screamed to walk away. That version of you was easy to control, predictable, software. That's the version they loved, not because it was real, but because it was manageable. But now you're unpredictable. Now you're distant. Now your silence speaks louder than your apologies ever did. And they don't know what to do with that. They don't know how to handle the version of you that chooses peace over proving a point, that chooses solitude over chasing, that chooses discipline over drama. And that scares them because they know they can't reach you anymore. You're not cold. You're not heartless. You're not bitter. You're just done. Done begging to be seen. Done explaining your worth. Done showing up for people who treat your presence like it's replaceable. You didn't change. You just woke up. You realize that people only value what they fear losing. And the second you made yourself too available, too forgiving, too understanding, they stopped trying. So now you've decided to become unavailable, unreachable, untouchable, and they call it ego. They call it pride, but they'll never call it what it really is, self-respect. You see, the world doesn't clap for the broken who keep bleeding. It only claps when the scars turn to strength. Nobody cares about your pain unless you turn it into something they can admire. So stop waiting for empathy. Stop looking for closure from people who sleep just fine after destroying you. You owe yourself more than that. You owe yourself the kind of love that doesn't ask you to shrink, the kind of peace that doesn't require chaos to appreciate. You owe yourself the kind of growth that makes your old life unrecognizable. And here's the hard truth. They never deserved access to your healing. They had their chance when you were broken, when you were vulnerable, when you needed someone to just show up, but they chose distance. They chose silence. They chose someone else. So don't you dare give them the reward of your evolution. Don't you dare let them back in after they watched you drown without lifting a finger. Let them wonder. Let them scroll. Let them remember who you were, but never let them meet who you've become. You're building now, not out of spite, but out of necessity. You're focused, not because you're angry, but because peace finally became louder than pain. You're quiet, not because you've got nothing to say, but because not everyone deserves to hear your voice. That's the beauty of healing. It makes you more dangerous than your hurt ever could. Because now, you're not reactive. Now, you move with intention. Now you calculate before you speak. You observe before you trust. And you walk away before they even realize what they lost. Let them talk. Let them twist your story. Let them play the victim in a narrative they created. Your job isn't to convince anyone of your worth. Your job is to protect your energy, build your empire, and guard your peace like it's sacred. Because it is. You bled for that peace. You broke for that discipline. You sacrificed for that silence. And no one, no matter how familiar, gets to take that away from you again. There's a moment, quiet, still, almost invisible, where something inside you snaps, not in rage, not in sorrow, but in silence. It's the moment you stop caring how they feel about your absence, the moment you stop justifying why you're no longer available. That's the shift they never see coming. You don't yell, you don't cry, you don't beg, you just disappear. Not off the map, but out of reach. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. You pull your energy back like a tide, and they feel it. Oh, they feel it. Not immediately. No. At first they think you're playing a game, but days turn to weeks. And that void you left behind starts whispering truths they tried to avoid, that they took you for granted, that they underestimated the weight of your silence, that they thought you needed them more than they needed you. But now, you've become what they fear most, a person who found peace without them, a person who stopped chasing, a person who doesn't flinch when they're mentioned. You became a ghost with power, and that terrifies them because they built their ego on your presence, on the idea that no matter what they did, you'd always come back. that you'd always be the soft place to land after they burned every bridge. But you changed the rules. You chose healing over hoping. You chose clarity over chaos. You chose you. And now they're stuck watching the rise of someone they thought they broke. People think silence is weakness, that if you're not screaming, you must not care. But silence is the loudest weapon there is. It holds everything you wanted to say, but knew wouldn't be heard. It carries the weight of every betrayal, every disappointment, every "I'm fine" that was a lie. And when you stop responding, when you stop explaining, when you stop showing up, that silence becomes a mirror. And people don't like mirrors. They show the truth. They reveal the damage. They force accountability. So when you go silent, you're not disappearing. You're reflecting. You're handing them the consequences they thought they'd never face. And that's why they come running. Not because they love you, but because they can't stand to sit with themselves. You spent so long looking for closure, for an explanation, for an apology that never came. But now you know, closure isn't something they give you. It's something you take. You take it the moment you decide you're done. The moment you stop trying to decode mixed signals and start reading actions. The moment you realize that confusion is a choice, not a condition. Because if someone wanted to be in your life, they'd make it clear. And if they don't, that's your answer. No more, maybe they're busy. No more, maybe they'll change. They showed you who they are. Believe them and walk. You're not bitter. You're just done wasting sweetness on people who spit it out. You're not cold. You're just tired of burning for people who never brought a spark. And if they say you've changed, good. That's the goal. You were never meant to stay soft for a world that feeds on softness. You were meant to become something untouchable, not hard, but solid. Not numb, but wise. And wisdom means knowing when to stop knocking on locked doors. When to stop investing in people who see your value only after it's gone. When to stop making excuses for those who never made the effort to understand you. Now you live for yourself, for your peace, for your goals, for the quiet nights where no one is calling, but your soul is finally at ease. You don't chase anymore, you attract. And what doesn't align, you let it go. Not out of spite, but because anything that costs your peace is too expensive now. They won't understand that. Let them think you're distant, arrogant, heartless. Let them make stories. But the ones who truly know peace, they'll see it in your eyes. They'll feel it in your calm. They'll know this isn't ego. This is freedom. They called you crazy, didn't they? For reacting to the things they did in silence. For finally snapping after holding everything in for so long. For speaking up after months, maybe years, of swallowing your pride and pretending it didn't hurt. They said you changed. They said you were difficult. But what they never talk about is what they did that made you go quiet in the first place. What they don't mention is how they chipped away at your soul piece by piece, act by act, silence by silence, until you had nothing left but the broken echoes of the person you used to be. And when you finally stood up, when you finally started walking different, talking different, demanding more, they called it an attitude. But no, that wasn't attitude. That was the awakening. That was the death of the version of you they could manipulate. They never saw the battles you fought when no one was watching. The nights you lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if you were the problem. The way you silenced your own needs just to keep people close. You gave so much of yourself away, trying to be loved. You forgot what it felt like to love yourself. But not anymore. That part of you, the part that accepted less, the part that hoped they'd change, the part that begged for bare minimum is dead. And in its place is something far more dangerous. A person who knows what they deserve. A person who's no longer afraid of walking alone. A person who's learned that silence isn't loneliness, it's control. The thing is, you don't even need to speak anymore. Your presence says enough. Your absence says more. You've become the lesson they'll never admit to learning. The one that haunts them when they laugh with others who don't even know who they truly are. You became a ghost, not because you vanished, but because you ascended. And now? Now they sit in the same places you once sat, wondering why it feels colder, why it feels quieter, why the energy shifted. It's because you left, and you took your peace with you, your attention, your time, your love, all of it, gone, like they never deserved it, because they didn't. Let them try to replace you. Let them search for your energy in shallow conversations and empty embraces. Let them realize too late that what you gave was rare. People always do. They always think you'll be around forever, that no matter how they treat you, you'll stay. Because you always did, right? You always forgave, always reached out, always gave the benefit of the doubt. But the thing about repeatedly forgiving someone who never learns is eventually you learn. You learn that staying isn't loyalty, it's self-destruction. And you finally chose yourself. And don't you dare feel guilty for that. Don't you dare apologize for finally putting your heart back in your own hands. They never cared when it was in pieces. They only cared when they noticed you stopped handing them the glue. You're not cruel. You're not bitter. You're not heartless. You're healed. And healing doesn't look like smiling all the time. Healing looks like boundaries, like silence, like not responding to messages that come too late, like not explaining your worth to people who never listened the first 100 times. Healing looks like growth, and growth is messy painful, and often misunderstood. But keep going, because they're watching. They always do. Watching to see if you'll come back. Watching to see if you'll break. Watching to see if you still care. So give them a show they'll never forget. Give them the silence that screams. Give them the glow up they can't look away from, not out of revenge, but as a reminder that they had gold in their hands, and they chose dust